5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the 136th episode of Rank and Review, and it's a pretty weird one. In fact, I don't think weird says it. I think maybe WTF says it. I think what the fuck says it. It's been a while since we've had a WTF category of podcast, and how weird could it possibly be? How WTF could it be? It's Wicker Man, WTF weird. It's an interesting mix and selection of movies that either have or maybe should have a cult audience around them, and they all seem either accidentally on purpose designed to induce a state of madness or lunacy or some such nonsense. Returning guest Jason Dubray returns, bruised but still surviving from our fight over the best horror movies of the 90s. So we'll welcome him back this episode, and I'm sure our regular listeners know the score, but be prepared for spoilers for the movies being reviewed, and for frequent coarse language from your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons most especially. Do check out our page at ranknreview.ca, and do please send me that feedback at ranknreview@gmail.com, ranknreview@gmail.com. So let's get into the weird, let's get into the wild, let's get into the WTF. Alright, Jason Dubray, welcome back to the podcast. So I guess we're a little bit ahead of things now. I just wanted to give you the heads up that this coming Wednesday for you, we're in the past now, the new episode of Rank and Review on Sharks. There's an open letter specifically to you read at the end of the episode.
Is there?
From Lee Beckman as a fairly hostile response to some of your selections in your best of the 90s. I noticed that he was very kind about all of his things he said about my choices, and very picky about what he said to you. I don't know if he's trying to suck up, but there's been a lot of good feedback on the 90s episode.
Nice.
But we're back, and we're going to talk about what the fuck movies. It's been a long time since I've done one on this subject, but it's funny, when I first started doing the podcast, I just started playing around, like what's a bunch of movies that I could randomly put together on weird themes. And one of the first episodes I remember putting together and just shaking my head like, this will be a nosebleed if I can talk someone into doing it. Is this what the fuck? And then I really tried to have like a something old, something new, something boiled, something blue approach here. Like there's like the high profile what the fuck movie, like the Nicolas Cage infamous remake of The Wicker Man, which most, crazy obnoxious movie connoisseurs or fans are at least aware of. And then there's some more sort of out there obscure titles. I think Freaked is a little bit of an unsung cult item, or a potential cult item. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about it when we get there. But I was talking to you before we started recording about what was the difference between a movie that you would just call mad, or there's like some sort of weird bent psychology behind it, which I mean obviously some of these could be accused of, or a movie that's what the fuck, a movie that just makes you go like, I don't know even where they were going for. I can't even, there's no map for this, right?
Yeah.
I think like that's what I'm going for. It's not strictly horror, although we're going to be talking about some horrific things. It's just movies that left me with a strangely stunned feeling. There's sometimes movies that'll do that in a good way, and maybe I'm not necessarily talking about a good way, but they're memorably strange movies. I don't know if it would belong on this list, but I just watched the new Coen Brothers movies, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
I want to see that. I haven't seen that yet.
No, I'm not going to spoil anything for you. But this feeling that I had it's a familiar one I have when I watch the Coen Brothers movies, is just sort of being vaguely stunned by it. Mm-hmm. With the Coen Brothers, usually it's in a good way, because I was just like, I know I've just been fed a pretty big meal and I have to digest it now. Mm-hmm. These movies have a similar sort of like gobsmacking aftertaste to them, like, what? It's like, that's awful, and I want to share it with the world in some way, or that's so strange that it must be seen. It's like that old Ellen DeGeneres stand-up joke. This tastes awful. Try it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, seriously, it's gross. Try it. You'll hate it. Try it. Right? And I'm not going to be necessarily like hostile, mean, thumbs down to all of these movies, but it's a strange list.
It is a strange list, and you were kind of warning me. We'll get to it in the reviews, but there was one movie in this that I've always wanted to see, and that's why I picked this.
Right.
Just the excuse to see this one particular movie, and then I watched all of the others, and you told me not to watch them too close together, or else I would probably lose my mind.
Yeah, I've had toxic responses with things like the Real Life Horrors episode or the torture porn episode. Oh yeah. Where like in like 3 or 4 days I watched 6 really heavy, really intense movies, and it just kind of like...
Yeah, it's too much.
And after a point, it actually might affect the rank. By the time I get to that 5th or 6th movie, I'm so like running out. I'm almost dead to it. I figured that if you watched, especially having not seen them before, all of these like... in a really condensed fashion, I could see it leaving you a little bit ruptured. Yeah,
and that wasn't really the case. I guess it was spread out just because of some. I haven't had time lately to like sit down and watch 6 movies in a row. A lot of them I finished off last weekend, and so when I was freed up a little bit. And I was really surprised because I was almost prepared, based on what you said, to hate everything here. When we get into it, there's a couple of these movies I like. Actually, you talk about the old thumbs up, thumbs down. I'd give thumbs up to a couple of them, and I actually somehow found redeeming qualities in each of these. There was one for sure. I thought I'm not going to find any redeeming qualities whatsoever, and I did, and so. Well,
let's get into it. Is there anything you want to just say before I list off the 6 movies?
No, I would just my usual thing of encouraging people to move out of their comfort zones with seeing films that are just that do not get a lot of attention or aren't really thought about, and that's the case with, I'd say, most of these. And some of them, people who lived through their releases may have forgotten that they exist.
Indeed. Well, here's what I'm saying. Some of these already are cult favorites. But for the ones that aren't, I'm going to say this episode is my sort of submitting them for consideration for that. Even if I say bad things about them, I think that they're so memorably fucked that in some way they kind of deserve to find an audience. And feel free to disagree with me, because that's why you're here. But so in the order that I have in my hand, we're going to talk about Chillerama, a deliberately cheesy tribute to deliberately cheesy B-movies. And then we have a MTV production called Freaked from Alex Winter. Then we're going to have from the famous, then infamous James Gunn, Super, from John Hughes, a very, very beloved and worshipped filmmaker.
Oh, yeah.
Probably his strangest directing effort anyway, Weird Science. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a forgotten 1991 action entity starring, at the time, not at all bankable stars Don Johnson and Mickey Rourke, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And I think that we'll finish it off with a discussion of the 2006 Neil LaBute approach on The Wicker Man. Starring Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
The Raging Cage. Okay. I actually have a proposed episode on Nicolas Cage, all basically inspired by that episode of Community, where Abed has the debate: is he a genius or is he a madman? Is he crazy or is he brilliant? I honestly don't know.
I'd love, that seems like something that I've tried to figure that out. I have a few theories, but
it really depends on the day, man.
4 no-holds-barred films from 4 of today's most demented directors. Chillerama is a carnival of gore, guts, and good times. First,
it is a biological anomaly the likes of which the medical community has never seen.
Godzilla.
Oh my god, it's coming!
Horror so tasteless.
It's getting bigger!
It's delicious.
You can say that again.
Then
Don't you like boobies?
feel the bite
It was your bite, my ass.
of I Was a Teenage Werebag.
Even a boy who thinks he's straight, yet shaves his balls by night, may become a bear.
Then discover how we really won the war. In The Diary of Anne Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Finally,
You kids get out of here!
witness the debauchery
What the sweet scent of Satan's scrote is going on here?
of zombie movie.
When there's no more room left in hell, the dead shall the earth.
Chillerama. You'll marvel at the madness.
So there's a lot that you can say about Chillerama. To distill it down to a few words is not easy. What I will say is that I definitely think that its heart is in the right place. I think that it knows what it is and it knows what it's paying tribute to. And it definitely doesn't pull any punches. It's like absolutely unpinning that grenade and letting that grenade go off. They're not worried about offending anybody. They're worried about actually leaving a few people unoffended. I think that they would be disappointed to find out. Like if you get through the entirety of Chillerama and there's nothing that makes you squeamish, nothing that makes you cringe, nothing that makes you feel any level of regret or oh my god, then I really hope you're talking to a therapist on a regular basis. My big problem with Chillerama is not where its heart is. In fact, I find this kind of perverse humor almost refreshing in this overly politically correct environment that we live in. Movies like The Meaning of Life or The Life of Brian or even Team America World Police feel like they couldn't happen anymore in the environment that we're sitting in right now. So the fact that it's completely balls to the walls, in your face offensive, in a way, I have less of a problem with today than maybe I would 5 or 6 years ago. That's not the problem. To me, the number one problem with Chillerama is the running time.
Oh yeah.
It's 2 hours and a little bit. I think it just creeps over the 2 hour mark. And I think instead of all of these stories being 22 to 26 minutes long, and you can watch them by themselves on YouTube, as the last time I checked, you can still see these individual films. I would have taken the different approach. I would have cut all of those individual stories about in half and just continue the conceit of cutting back and forth with the people in the drive-in and the film. Constantly interrupt the film, because I don't have a real problem necessarily with the tale of a teenage werebear, except for that it goes on too long, right? Yeah. Wadzilla, the story about a guy whose ejaculate turns into a giant carnivorous beast, is what it is, but it's stretched out too long, even at that time. I think that it's kind of fun and diverting, but too much at 2 hours. But if they'd somehow managed to cut this down to like 85 to 90 minutes, I might be enthusiastically endorsing this as an over-the-top, like, holy shit, you guys. But there's just too much. Too much for me. I remember about 2/3 of the way through the movie, they do this hilarious, like, segment on fecal humor where all of a sudden we're seeing all these like dancing girls with like literally shit smeared on them, and I'm like, I guess they hadn't done that yet. They just had another box that they needed to check off. But I didn't laugh, and I didn't like appreciate it. I wasn't like I was worn out. And I think I could have really got off on the over-the-top, sex zombies at the end if I wasn't already worn out.
You're done from the other
but
stuff. Yeah.
I was done. So I think largely it's kind of a swing and a miss, but it is hypnotizingly perverse and over the top. So it's kind of hard to look away from. That's where I start on Chillerama, but I'd love to get a Dubray approach.
Well, I never really pay much attention to the running length of a movie. To me, a good movie can never be too long. A bad movie can never be too short. The problem is, I'm with you. I feel like there's a target audience for this movie, and I feel like the target audience will be satisfied with what they get from it. So my balance is, okay, was it successful in what it was intending to do? I think it was, with the points that you're mentioning. But then I also have to go back to, do I like this film? And I don't.
Right.
I don't. But it is ambitious. It's trying to do something that nobody else does. I think it was a pretty small budget. And so, of course, I admire independent filmmakers trying to do their own thing there. But it does offend. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The one, the Diary of Anne Frankenstein, I think, and almost in some ways that might be the best of all of these.
That
as
would
far
be my
as
personal favorite.
As far as the films, and I like what they do to the Nazis. Yet there's some stuff in there that's really, really offensive to Jewish people as well. So.
But for me, it's not the over-the-top offensiveness of the premise in the Diary of Anne Frankenstein. It's Adam Green directed it, the guy who did the Hatchet series and stuff like this. But I think that the Joel David Moore, the actor who's playing Hitler, is fucking hysterical.
Oh yeah,
I think he kills it as Hitler. Like, this is the Charlie Chaplin Hitler that we're allowed to laugh at. Like, there's nothing serious about this. And then it's also got the sort of Police Squad Ed Wood quality with like the very clearly bad sets, and that is the story of all of them that holds its length the best. But still, I think if you cut it in half or just gave us the highlight reel, because in the conceit of the setup of the narrative, there's a bunch of people showing up to watch these drive-in movies. It's the last night, the theater's closing. And these are super obscure, super offensive movies. And while we see these different movies, we get this 22 minutes version of each of the movies. We cut back in between to the people, most of them just awful.
Oh, terrible people, yeah.
And that's all deliberate because they're going to kill them all in the end. The zombies are going to pour out from the movies into the real world. And
there's about three sympathetic characters. You almost feel sympathy for the drive-in owner, but then that
it's
changes.
Kind of the sweet couple that bring their baby.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're all right.
They seem like decent people, but like everybody's like.
I like the concession, the girl behind the concession, but they just.
We're supposed to like the guy who runs the theater, but I don't know how.
I don't think that was successful.
No.
But there was something sort of set up initially, which I can appreciate with movie theaters everywhere closing. Saskatoon is pretty bad for this, and drive-in theaters haven't been a thing here for a long time. And it's sad for me to see those places closing, and people do show up in the last week and like, where have you been for the last several years to keep this going? So, and fighting a corporation that's trying to knock it down and use it for, I don't know, I forget what they're doing.
I think that instead of cutting after or in between the stories, we should have been constantly going back in there. In fact,
I agree with you.
It would have been like a good opportunity to like Mystery Science Theater it too. If people don't like it, or if the obnoxious jocks are offended by all the homosexuality in the Werebear story, maybe we can hear them, complaining about it, right?
Yeah, we go from one car to the other, and we have that kind of That would be more entertaining. Also, I didn't get the sense that the people I saw going to this drive-in movie have the attention spans to be able to concentrate on each of these wonderful stories. So.
And I think that I would have made the world of the drive-in a little bit more real until the third act. Like, this movie opens, this guy's dug up a grave.
Yeah, that scene was
so that he
so
could
bad.
have, like, a vengeance necrophile rape sex
his
thing.
girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend.
He gets bit, and then he's, like, jerking off in the back room of the theater, and he's using the actual butter for the popcorn, and it's like, it's so fucking vile. And I understand
from the beginning, it's
part of the movie's point is to be so fucking vile, but I think I would have limited the vileness to, as much as possible, the stuff on screen.
Yes.
Until the third act, when the sex zombies spill out and it becomes the real world, and then Chillerama becomes like this ridiculous over-the-top pie fight to end the movie.
Yeah.
And we're all having fun with it. I mean, but again, I guess it's not fair for me to say the movie's bad because I could have made it better. Going like a piece at a time. Wadzilla, one word premise, not the one that I would have opened with. Right? This doesn't start strong.
Well, we already had the necrophilia, the rapes. Then we have then we get into this really, really gross story. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. It's a point, but
I will say, and this is not really defensive of it, but there's something horrifying, and I'm sorry to be so graphic, Jason, because there's no way to avoid it. But the idea of ejaculating just one giant, like, it's
painful
around.
too for the.
Well, yeah, and absolutely painful, but
I mean, the guy doesn't act it well, but
Yeah, but this is the world we're living in, and like, it's a one joke premise with a one joke execution, and it overstays its welcome. Then we have the musical surf horror comedy Tale of a Teenage Werebear, which again is completely solid, and I like this sort of musical theater approach to the premise.
Yeah.
But it overstays its welcome once again.
It's like Grease has gone wrong or something, or Grease goes wrong on
an epic
the Grease itself, but this is.
And there were times where I couldn't understand, or I couldn't decide if I was uncomfortable because they wanted me to be uncomfortable, or if I was uncomfortable just because I was uncomfortable. You know, is it pushing buttons, or is it just rubbing my nose in it, or is that the same thing? I don't know.
And I could get behind some of this, but I mean, how many rape jokes are we at this point? And this is only the second movie.
Yeah.
And again, I shouldn't, as you're saying before, maybe I shouldn't be, this is the world we're in with this movie, but...
Then to the one that we mentioned that we both liked the best, The Diary of Anne Frankenstein.
It nearly saves the movie for me, which is so strange.
I think because again they don't make the humor about. Well, there is Jewish stereotypes obviously in the design of the monster, but more of it's about making fun of old film technique.
Yeah.
And the artifice, and again that hilarious over the top Chaplin approach to Hitler, where we're allowed to see him as like this ridiculous clown. And his failure is inevitable because of his like clear incompetence. It's not a safe topic, but it was somehow safer to laugh at this. And like I said, you can watch these by themselves on YouTube. And if you want to give one of these a try, check out The Diary of Anne Frankenstein.
To me, it works in the grindhouse world. That one. And I think what they're trying to do with each of these films is to cover the subgenres of the drive-in theater experience from 50s
and
onward,
60s, where these are movies that would be greenlit on the basis of their titles, sold and booked before they've even been produced.
Yeah.
So they would take hot button issues and or like topical, controversial, button-pushing things and come up with a concept and a poster and sell that.
Yeah.
And then some poor asshole had to go make the movie. Right? So a lot of them are terrible. And like, I understand that these shorts have a deliberate cheesiness and badness to them, but I'm not enjoying the badness. I'm not like, I'm not feeling it as a satire or even a tribute. It's just like another entry into the bad.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Team America, World Police, or South Park in its way. I mean, there's some things where you're like, but there are a lot of laughs, and there are more laughs.
But it's about something more than being gleefully offensive.
It's about something, and it's funny.
Which leads us to the last story, if you can call it that, which is the zombie massacre, where the people finally have all become infected by this weird zombie virus, which makes you not just want to eat somebody, but have sex with them and eat them. It's fun for the whole family. There are a few sequences in that movie that had some like over the top, they went there shock value to them that is, I guess, guiltily amusing to me. But again, the movie has outstayed its welcome. It's another one of these movies that I wish I could take scissors to, because I bet you I could cut you down a pretty digestible 85-minute version of Chillerama.
Well, some of your suggestions, I think, this movie, the movie you're describing that you could turn it into, would be higher on my list. Yeah, because I could see it would cover everything that they were trying to do, but would improve the experience. So I don't normally like cutting movies down, because I'll watch 4-hour movies. Yeah, I get you. But this one needed to be cut down because it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. There's something else I was going to say, but it fell right out of my head. It's certainly not something you need to really find. This is the kind of movie that doesn't get made anymore. No. Won't get made anymore. But some people would say shouldn't get made anymore, and I think I will stop short of that.
Yeah, no. There's an audience for this.
Absolutely.
And again, we would go back to one of the short movies, and the premise of, going to an outdoor movie theater in a car and that experience, which, I mean, I'm sure if I'm talking to my high school students, they won't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. They may have heard about it. Or past. Yeah, which I hope it comes back somehow, but I don't know if it will.
There's a percentage of respect I have for it, for just going for it. It really is as depraved and crazy as it can think to be. It doesn't pull any punches. And that's not necessarily my cup of tea, but it's going to be an exception to the rule, I think, going forward. Movies like this just aren't going to get made for a while.
We get a lot of very safe PG-13.
This is not safe,
movies.
And the fact that
there's nothing safe about it. No.
Yeah, the fact that it's not safe doesn't make it good necessarily, but it weirdly gives it some points for me.
Yeah. Can I get either of you gentlemen a pillow or a blanket?
Yes, please.
Is that your luggage up there?
Yeah.
Is that your ugly little troll?
Stewie, Glock!
Look! I got a rare still from your first season on the Baker's Dozen. Could you sign it for me, please? Rick, it says here Zygrod 24's dangerous. Why are you lending your name to it, Rick? You used to be good, and now I just don't know.
So freaked. I remember reading somewhere, I don't know, I do a lot of internet surfing, magazine reading on movies. There was like a list of some of the funniest movies you've never heard of. And they included Freaked on it, and it made me smile because I so rarely hear of anyone talk about this movie, let alone like acknowledge its existence. And, it did not stick in the public consciousness. It did not leave any ripples in the water culturally at all. It just came and it went. It's an MTV movie, co-written and co-directed by Alex Winter, who was, I guess, quote, hot off of the Bill and Ted movies at the time. And he made this movie Freaked, which is about a child star who has grown out of his cute phase, and that the movie makes no attempt at any time to make it all likable or charming or appealing or heroic. He's kind of like accidentally funny sometimes, just sort of situationally, but really our main character is kind of a charisma vacuum in the movie.
Yeah.
But he sells his soul to be a spokesperson for some evil, toxic company who has this toxic chemical, which is terrible for the environment and just bad. And William Sadler plays the memorably evil business executive who cackles maniacally and has an alter ego who we hear over the phone who's known as the Laughing Man.
And the Laughing Man was a stretch for him, I think.
So he's in somewhere in Europe, and he finds this freak show run by Randy Quaid. He and his buddy and this feminist environmentalist loudmouth woman who's somehow managed to be tagged along with them get taken in by the evil and insane Randy Quaid and turned into freaks for his freak show. And ironically, the very toxic chemical he was there to promote is the thing that has turned him into a beast. They must befriend the other freaks, escape the freak show, and have this story told. Jason, what did you think of Freaked?
Well, it also has to be told on daytime television, and
to Brooke Shields.
Yeah, to Brooke Shields as the host. I'd just be like, would not be quite Jerry Springer, maybe more Maury Povich type of figure. Very 80s. Good cast, actually. I mean, I think about the people involved with this, and you mentioned one I didn't actually know that was involved with it. So I think there's a target audience, and I think it was successful. I really wrestled with, is this going to be in the middle of my list, or is this going to be the worst one on the list? I feel like in some ways it's ambitious, but we just talked about Chillerama. Chillerama has a lot more ambition to it. This one, I'm not sure playing safe is quite right, because there's some pretty out there things. But it somehow I feel like it as a whole movie it works better. It certainly had a bigger budget to work with. I was less grossed out by it. I mean, some of the ideas are
I actually genuinely enjoy some of the freak designs.
There's some creativity in it.
Yeah.
There is. And I was just went back to a different time, and there are jokes in there that I get because of when I grew up. So there's this voiceover about when he's flying over in the plane about how bad the what do you watch in the plane? Return of the Blue Lagoon. And Brooke Shields says, I hear it's awful.
Right.
And that's very much an inside joke, which when it was released in theaters, more people would have got. I enjoyed some of that.
Well, later in the podcast, we're going to talk about the dangers of setting your movie in the very near future. I think what this movie is a cautionary tale is setting your movie right now and being about how hip and now and cool and right now.
Which now, I mean, I can show that, and maybe the freaks and all that will be interesting. I don't know how many people know who Mr. T is anymore, and Mr. T's in there, and he's
wearing a dress.
And that's, again...
Here's the thing that I respect about Freaked, okay? It's not about anything except for trying to make you laugh. Like, it's barely about a plot, an A, B, and C, and like I'm like a disciplined story guy, and there's barely a story there, but like you really don't know what you're gonna get scene to scene here. Like you say, Mr. T in a dress, Keanu Reeves as a wolf man, Bobcat Goldthwait as a sock puppet. Like Rastafarian eyeballs with Uzis.
Which looks like something out of Pixar. I mean,
there is a bizarre, demented imagination to the script and to the design. and a very laissez-faire approach, like I say, to story. The characters are all just zinger machines. There's this like misogynistic asshole stereotype and this sort of feminazi humorless stereotype that get molded into one freak that just hate each other and fight all the time. But are amusing, A, because just the conceit of it is hilarious, and B, because, like I said at the beginning of the review, this is the kind of open commentary we just seem not to be allowed to make anymore. No. All of the best and worst in humanity gets squished into one character there, and there's no winners, you know?
No.
There's, I think, the moment where I realized, well, like, I would say 2 moments where I realized, okay, this movie is memorable in a way that I want to spread the word. There's this really obsessive troll problem child-esque
looks like Dennis the Menace.
Yeah, who stalks the main character of the movie. And there's a scene where he falls out of an airplane, and we cut to a wide shot of a huge pile of hay. And then we see the little kid land brutally and roughly on the hard earth right next to it. And, like, it made me laugh. Or there's this scene where we're getting the origin of all of the freaks. And we see, you know, one day I wandered to the freak show and he turned me into a worm. And one day I wandered to the freak show and it turned me into a sock puppet. And then he buys a wrench from a store, or a hammer from a store, and he turns it into a wrench. Just an absurd, like, completely... It goes to the airplane school of, we're just going to keep throwing the most obvious shit at you, and there'll be so many of them that you won't be able to resist them all. You just won't. It's also incredibly short. An 80-minute movie.
So you're happy with that,
yes,
because that's the length you were looking for with Chillerama.
Don't overstay your welcome. If you're just going to be about the stupid and the style, don't overstay your welcome. In its own clumsy way, and there are jokes that don't work, and it's not wall-to-wall genius. Like, I don't want to necessarily oversell it. But I laughed out loud several times when I rewatched this. And I'd seen the movie several times from a young age, right? And it still had a few that kind of got me. And I appreciate that. So I am a fan, however guilty, of Freaked.
I wish I could have laughed more. I didn't.
Yeah.
I saw what they were trying to do, and it was fine. And I got a little bit more interested in, like, there's a reference to Jake and the Fat Man, and how was that on the air so long, and how hot Kim Basinger is, and so there was something kind of nostalgic about going back. Okay, I know the exact time that this came out, and what was happening, and maybe when it first came out, if I watched it, I might have liked it more. So for me, it was. They don't make movies like this anymore. I could almost see this being like like the old version of Super Channel. This would come up some afternoon and watch it and go, oh yeah, that's worth seeing for, you know.
I think it is obviously
basically for free, but you know,
more memorable to us because we're the right age for it. Again, if you're coming to it with fresh eyes, it just might be strange, but you know, it's the little things. The freaks have this, they need to escape, so they hatch this plan that they'll knock out the milkman and dress like the milkman, right?
Yes.
But they all simultaneously come up with the same plan and somehow all end up dressed up as milkman. And they're spotted by Randy Quaid, who has this line, so many milkmen on the same route. No wonder they
fight so much, yeah.
Like, that is awesome. When the
that was the payoff to that bit, because that was actually a long bit, because it's established.
We got there, though, when the sock puppet gets shot, and they take the sock off of his head, and his bare hand is exposed, and we see a little bit of blood coming out of the corner and the hinge of his thumb as he coughs out his dying breath. It's so fucking beautifully goddamn crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I respect.
Yeah.
Respect. Is it for everybody? Again, like every movie on this list, no.
Not for everybody.
There are people who would react really violently to it, and it does have this aggressive, in-your-face style. And there is something, like, tactilely gross about the slimy grossness point of it. And
but it's the movie it works with this type of movie. So if you have trouble with that, then I don't think you would ever go near this movie.
I would say if you went to high school in the early 90s, check it out.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I think so.
And if you haven't, but you've heard our description of this and it sounds like something you could get behind, absolutely. Perhaps not for the casual viewer, but again, I am submitting this for cult status. For the right audience, on the right day, on the right midnight screening, this is the right movie.
If you can find it, it's hard to find.
Right.
That's one of the problems. I mean, it would be great to get another generation of people seeing this and they'll look at it and from a different set of eyes. Like we would look at something that was, kind of 20 years before our time, but had that kind of cult following. And I think I think it has good qualities, and it's a professionally made film, which I appreciated. Again, I kind of like the independent people who are getting together and doing their own thing, but then sometimes it becomes a 2-hour plus movie about sperm or something.
Yeah.
And this one's the right length. Randy Quaid is absolutely perfect for this role. In fact, I think that's probably what he's doing right now. Is he's probably turning a bunch of people into freaks, and because I haven't seen him for a long time, and
he just spent his life playing so many memorable weirdos that he turned into a memorable weirdo himself.
Yeah, and it was all just kind of different versions of Cousin Eddie, but
not as lovable.
No, R-rated Cousin Eddie. So
again, check it out if it sounds like something that you could get behind. It's a little personal here. I have a guilty love for it. I'm not going to apologize.
But your love for it makes me appreciate it, enjoy it even more.
Yeah.
When it was, to me, it was actually one of the more blah movies in a list of like really out there.
I wouldn't say it's not out there. It's definitely out there. Like the humor in it is very strange at times.
It's strange.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good enough?
Good enough.
All it takes to be a superhero is the choice to fight evil.
Shut up, crime. Don't steal. Don't deal drugs. Don't molest kids.
Brutal assault by the Crimson Bolt continued last night.
Are you him?
No.
That's cool. I could be your kid's sidekick. How do I look?
That's inappropriate.
Frank is the only thing that will save me.
We will take those suckers down.
That's good.
Let's do this.
You just sit here and wait for crime to happen?
That's right.
This is so boring.
Yes, I can tell you now it's You're supposed to kill him!
I'm just learning. You have to teach me these things.
This is not about good and evil. This is about she loving me more because I am interesting.
So in the episode previous to this one, I reviewed Spike Jonze's film Her.
Yeah.
Which would seem a weird thing to open with talking about Super, but to me, the main character in Her is as damaged but less psychologically bent version of the Rainn Wilson character in Super. This desperately lonely man who has these childlike drawings. He draws them himself, but it really does look like the drawing of a 12-year-old kid's first swing at things. Of these, his best memories, meeting his wife and a time that he directed the cop in the direction of a purse snatcher.
Yeah.
So he is this really sad sack, lonely guy, and precipitated directly with the love of his life being stolen by a memorably sleazy Kevin Bacon, and having her old habits reignited and having drugs reintroduced to her. He hits bottom. And either has a psychotic episode or is literally actually touched by the finger of God when in a memorable hallucination or whatever the hell that scene is.
And he goes through a history where of these religious events.
Yeah. So he believes that he has to take revenge on the world, and he gets himself an outfit, and he paints a wrench red, and he hides behind dumpsters. And
Waiting for crime.
Waits for crime to happen so he can fight it.
Trying to end evil. Yeah.
And the humor in the movie is so pitch black as to be like almost the risk of losing its audience at times. Like, I remember my memory of the first time watching the movie, other than to spoilers, I actually am a big fan of this movie. This is going to be a big thumbs up review, and controversially to some people. But the thing that stuck with me was the sound effect of that wrench coming down on people's skulls.
Did you see it in theater?
I did not. I saw it when it was brand new on video. But there was something so awful and visceral and terrible in that we know the character, we feel for the character, we kind of like the character, but we are regularly horrified by the things that he says and does. It is a deeply strange movie from the deeply strange mind that is James Gunn, and I think it's kind of hard to shake, kind of unforgettable. It's not hilarious. It's not this laugh out loud, engaging, wacky satire of superhero movies. It's a dark, dark psychological comedy. And if it's to your taste, you're going to like it. But if it ain't, you're going to be slogging through some deep, cold mud. Mm. I'm curious to hear what you thought of Super.
I like things dark, obviously, because I laughed and I laughed and I laughed. And this is one of the ones where you were warning me about this list, and I'm looking through, and I'm going in like full-on critic. I'm going to jump on it, everything. And there's a bit of a... And I feel that's sort of a sub-theme of the movies we're looking at. And actually, one of them I might argue is less like this, and it's the one I thought would be most like this. But there's a lot of misogyny in these films. And Liv Tyler's character, and they try to redeem this at the end a little bit, but she's just basically a possession of two men. And she's has problems with alcohol and drugs. And just this guy comes in, and it's like those after school don't say no to drug things from the 80s, where somebody holds you down and injects drugs into your system, and then she's off like living in a strip club with this violent gangster guy.
She doesn't seem to have her own agency so much.
No, not until, and not even really late in the film. So there's her character, but then there's another female character who steals the whole freaking movie, and I was on the fence, and then Ellen Page shows up in this thing, and she is as with Rainn Wilson's character as damaged and troubled and sad as he is, and how misguided he is with his violence. Like, she is a full on psycho. Like she wants to hurt folks, and she there was this guy
of her mind.
Yeah, and I don't know what this says about me as a human being, but there's a sequence when she vies to she works in a comic store, and that's how they first meet, and she kind of discovers the identity of Rainn Wilson, and that he's this vigilante who's going around hurting people, and he's viewed as a criminal initially, and then people start to realize, these are actual pedophiles and horrible people that he's
pretty good at
attacking.
Selecting his victims most of the time.
Yeah.
But the dude who buds in line at the film,
you don't bud in line, and he goes and he
splits his skull
and his girlfriend or wife's skull. And at the end of this sequence, they are just covered in blood on the side of the street. And God help me, I'm laughing at this. But then, but getting back to Ellen Page's character, she's heard that the one guy, what did he do? stole a cell phone or something. He did something real.
Scratched her car.
Keyed. Yeah, her friend's car. I think it was
and
her friend's car. I'm pretty sure it was him. It says it pretty sure after they've gone in and just nearly killed the guy. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but I love these characters. That part of the movie is so good, and I also like how dark it is. That nobody necessarily escapes, because I think it's going in one direction with that relationship, and they suggest a few things, but then they take a turn in the third act with that relationship, which is completely different. And I'm rarely surprised, but I was surprised what sort of the payoff or whatever is with the Ellen Page character. Mm-hmm. But I was reminded again how good she is. And she's been in some really serious dark movies as well. But this was that kind of Juno energy, but it was foul-mouthed, hardcore, R-rated.
I was at a weird place with Ellen Page because I like her, and she's Canadian, so I want to be supportive and everything like that. And she blew up after Juno. And Juno's an intensely charming movie, but there's something about her in that movie with her weird dead eyes and her pithy delivery that I just sort of cemented in my mind. That's Ellen Page. And
so
she coasted pretty easily for a couple of things that I'd seen her in then. Now, since then, I've seen her in a couple things that I've come around.
And
this was the one that I was like, holy shit, girl. Because you're right, it's not just her enthusiasm, but there is violence in her, and she is going to find a way to do some terrible harm. Now,
she drives a car into a guy, cuts him in half, and she's sort of half out of her suit for various reasons, and so she's basically in her bra and part of her, not really disguised at all as her superhero sidekick, Bolty, I think was the name.
Yes.
And I don't know many people that would do that, would go to that place, particularly when she was starting to.
It would not be an easy thing to play and retain likability, right?
Yeah.
She builds actual claws, stabs the hip, kills a guy, continues stabbing him, and then when she's shushed, she giggles as she shushes up. Yes. There is real, joyful, terrifying glee in the violence. And there's also a sexual component to this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of uncomfortable scenes in this movie, actually. There's a couple of scenes between, Michael Rooker and Rainn Wilson, or Kevin Bacon and Rainn Wilson, where they treat him so, such a subhuman that it actually makes me kind of uncomfortable. They establish themselves as supervillains just on their treatment of this character.
Yes.
But, Ellen Page, I guess, rapes ? Rainn Wilson in a scene. I mean,
it's kind of
he's not into it. He says no. He continues to say no. But she forces the issue. It's kind of hot, but more uncomfortable. She's a child by contrast to him, by his eyes, anyway. It's weird,
and we don't know her backstory and what's going on with that. She has an age-appropriate kind of boyfriend early in the movie, and then kind of dumps him completely when she discovers.
Once this guy's wearing a costume and beating people up, she is on
because
board.
But I think it's a little bit of a comment on uber comic book fans where that world makes more sense than the world they're living in, and she sees an opportunity to make her life more exciting by becoming a superhero sidekick. And I don't know, I liked her in this. I found her charming. There may be some people that watch this and are like, wow.
Oh, dear.
Mr. Parsons, it's time to get to new guest critics.
You need some help.
Some help here.
But it's a brave performance. I could see a lot of actresses just reading that script saying, I do what to Rainn Wilson now?
Yeah.
Right? This makes sense. How? But she absolutely sells that character.
I don't know how she feels about that now. because she is an activist for women's rights, for the rights of sexual minorities, and
she claimed to love the script, at least in the little vignette that comes with the movie that's designed to promote the movie.
Yeah, so you're not going to say, well,
it was a paycheck.
I lost a bet. I think she became friends with Rainn Wilson because has that kind of extended cameo in Juno
too.
And maybe that's why this was after. So
yeah.
And Rainn Wilson's one of the producers.
Yeah, and
may have called her up to see if she would do this. And
the violence in the movie is shocking.
It's
and
Tarantino-esque.
And there is some grim fates, and it's so strange. The tone of the movie's all over the place. Nathan Fillion.
Yes. The Holy Redeemer.
The Holy Redeemer.
Yes.
It's based on apparently a real thing. There's this like cable access show, the Bible Man or something like that. He didn't use the actual name of it.
Well, he gets sued probably.
Exactly. But he sort of shows up as a figure of good, a symbol of good in Rainn Wilson's madness.
Well, and there's a lot of fun in these awful this TV show or whatever, and there's a scene where two of like the teenagers who learn a lesson at the end of each of these from the Holy Redeemer are like S&M gear. Well, we nearly lost our virginities, and
they used the money they made on that Bible show to go buy some crack. It's so absurd, and the weirder thing about Nathan Fillion is like that's the second time he's played a weirdo, over the top superhero. If you've ever seen that sing-along blog, what was it, Dr. Horrible sing-along blog?
Oh yeah, that was
Nathan Fillion
popular.
Again plays an over-the-top ham-head superhero. Such a strange and welcome addition. And I'd known, like, I saw Slither. I love Slither, by the way, too, but I knew that the guy who wrote that was a little bit warped. Like, the record was never going to come out pure and clean. There was going to be a little bit sous-sang going on. But that's sort of the wild card thing that James Gunn brings to it. And that's why I think that Guardians of the Galaxy had a bit of a crazy edge to it. The crazy thing about Super is Super seemed like the movie that he would have got to make after he did the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Not before.
Not before. Like, I don't know who greenlights this movie and who reads the script and says, "This is money, baby."
It's Rainn Wilson, because it was right in the middle of The Office, and he was moving into an A-list thing, which I don't think he ever got to. And maybe he'll come back with something, I don't know.
Well,
but
he did well in the Meg.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, so he's still getting work. I mean, he's not okay. I'm going to have my $500 million film and have him be the anchor.
He's not going to open a movie by himself. No. Yeah.
But at the time, his stock was higher than it is now, and I think he's the reason the movie got made.
I think it's almost more dark than funny, and I think that that's going to hurt its audience.
For some audience members.
I love it.
I laughed and I laughed. I had such a good time. I was like, what?
But I just want to be careful, because there are people like my wife. We'll go to spoilers here. We sort of talked around it, but they finally have to go rescue the Maiden Fair, and he finally agrees to let his sidekick team up. I just want, before I go into this, the whole sexual angle, I also thought it was a meta commentary on the sidekick thing, like in the quote real world, Robin to Bruce Wayne or Short Round to Indiana Jones. It's not really a good reason for them to be hanging out if they're not lovers.
Okay.
So he didn't want that. He wanted it to be more of a mentor thing. She forced the sexual angle. Anyway, they have this complex relationship, but they're a team now. And they go to storm the place, and they do a pretty good job of taking out the first wave of security guards.
Yes.
And then they're both suddenly shot. Rainn Wilson takes it in the vest, and Ellen Page takes it full in the face. And she's dead, and there's no happy ending for her. And it completely... I think that's the moment that breaks the spell for the Rainn Wilson character. I think that all of a sudden...
he turns into the...
It's real, there's stakes, they've just murdered this kid, it's his fault. and now he's going to kill these guys or die trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a motivating thing. It's not just death for the sake of death.
No.
But I have to tell you, it is fucking shocking.
Oh, it's grisly, yeah.
And like, I watched it with my wife, and I really felt that moment put her off her food. Like, she just, like, it made her not like the movie.
I could see that. Well, also, but I think it's because it's not expected.
No.
I didn't expect it. And yet I admire the film for doing that.
So much time building up that relationship between the two of them.
But it's making not predictable.
They're going to heal each other. They're going to help each other. They're going to learn from each other. No.
Because it's obvious Liv Tyler's not really that into him.
Live by the gun, but die by the gun. And yeah, I would have really, really resented if the movie ended with him winning back Liv Tyler and the marriage being the thing.
Yeah, they handled that well.
The denouement where he says, "I saved her not for me, but so that she could later on go get married, have kids, and raise these perfect kids, and they're going to make a better world." Yeah. And they wouldn't have existed if I didn't do what I did.
Yeah.
It justifies the psychosis. But that's the cool question you can ask yourself. You can tell yourself that it's legit, that God did touch him, and that God did bring him together with her, and that she was maybe a little bit too mad to live, but she served her purpose to get him to where he needed to be. Or he's just a lunatic. It's like it's a variation of Fight Club, where the movie opens on fucking psycho. And this is how he sees the world, and these are the decisions he makes. But as dark as it is and as weird as it is, you cannot compare it to anything. It's just
its own thing.
It's not the movie you think it's going to be, and it's
so much more interesting than a lot of superhero movies, or and it's not really a parody of superhero movies. And the characters are consistent. There's a scene in there fairly early in the film where he's considering buying this cute little bunny rabbit, but he knows he's going to screw that up.
Yeah.
And it just kind of sits there, and you kind of forget about it a little bit. But there's a payoff to that. There's consistency. The Rainn Wilson character never swears because he is because of this whole religious whatever it is upbringing and he gets after Ellen Page for swearing as much as she does.
He's also complimented because he met Liv Tyler in a recovery program. She was sort of at her bottom, and he helped her pick her up on her feet.
Yeah.
That was sort of the initial bond that developed between them. And large part of that is sort of a religious angle.
Yeah.
Be humble, be grateful, say please and thank you, don't use bad words.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting movie, and I enjoyed it so much, and it was a breath of fresh air compared to some of the other movies we're talking about.
This is another one like Freaked that I feel like not enough people saw, and another one that I want to submit that it deserves a cult audience.
And it's more accessible, I think, than Freaked.
Oh
yeah, I had an easy time finding this. I couldn't.
It's not just about making you laugh. Like Freaked. The good and bad thing about Freaked is all it was just a joke factor.
Well, it's an R-rated Naked Gun type of thing. This is more going on.
Satirical and different and original.
And I love black comedies, and this is as black as they come.
And again, I think we're going to see less and less in them as we go forward.
Unfortunately.
It's not a bad idea.
What?
Making a girl. Actually making a girl.
This is Wyatt and Gary.
I'd give her warm digis mammary glands.
Something's about to change their world. Something out of this world.
She's alive! Alive!
What would you little maniacs like to do first?
It's all in the name of science. Weird science.
If you want to be a party animal, you have to learn to live in the jungle.
Not us. Not here. No way.
She is turning their lives.
Trust me for once, will you?
What is going on?
Gary, I don't know. I don't know.
Their minds. And their house. Upside down.
It's seriously affecting your sex life.
It's completely unnatural.
Do you realize it's snowing in my room?
Totally unbelievable.
What's going on?
And definitely weird.
Hi, dudes.
They went from zeros to heroes in one fantastic weekend.
It's scary how time goes by. 1985 was when Weird Science came out, and counterintuitively, although I grew up with like savage horror movies and saw like things like The Shining and The Exorcist while I was still in the single-digit age category, I had a great affection for John Hughes movies. And this had a lot of benefits. A, I think he was a smart, funny screenplay writer, first of all. And B, when I got into my teenage years, I could relate to a lot of the teenage girls who were really into. I could say things like, you know, Some Kind of Wonderful is really like Pretty in Pink with the better ending. And get super play out of that. Respect.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's like quoting chapter and verse on Sense and Sensibility or something.
Yeah.
Just sideswipe a girl with your knowledge. The thing is that as much as I love John Hughes and as much as I understand him as being this venerated, respected figure, his time has come and gone. And a lot of his movies have started to show their age. I still think he will have movies that will be timeless. I think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles will always be great. I think that The Breakfast Club, bumps and all, is going to be a sort of remembered, because it's one of the first movies to take teenagers seriously.
Yeah.
But there is some rough politics in his movie. There is in his movies, and all of them. There's usually one or two scenes now, especially if you go back, where you go, that wouldn't fly today.
Yeah.
And none worse, I would argue, than Weird Science. In all of John Hughes' movies, even though seriously toned one, there would seem to be one moment that would break reality. In The Breakfast Club, Emilio Estevez screams so loudly he shatters a glass door.
Yes.
In Ferris Bueller's Day Off, all of a sudden the entire city is like singing along to Twist and Shout with Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
And it just becomes this ridiculous shit show.
Yeah.
In Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, when they have the near-death experience, John Candy literally turns into an impish devil form for a split second.
Yeah.
He'll have these moments where he breaks reality.
Yeah.
Weird Science is the only movie he made where the whole movie seems to exist in that place.
Other than the very, very beginning, I think the first 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. But as soon as they create the girl, this is basically some horny teenage boys make a Frankenstein's monster out of this super model. And instead of becoming a monster and destroying the place, she actually goes about the business of making these boys better people. I recently reviewed a very charming movie called Robot and Frank about this robot that helps a senile fellow. And
Yes.
You're always putting sinister affectations on artificial intelligence. It's kind of nice and refreshing to see this artificial intelligence that's really trying to make these boys grow up and be better, less shitty people. So I think its heart's in the right place, and I still think the movie is full of funny lines. But there's some really, really cringeworthy stuff in here. Particularly the trip to the nightclub and the very racist interaction. The more
you're going there right away.
I just want to get it out of the way. The drunker that Michael C. Hall gets, or what's his name? Sorry. Oh my God. Anthony Michael Hall.
Anthony Michael Hall. Yeah, I get those two mixed up.
I got all
sometimes
garbled on that.
Yeah.
Anthony Michael Hall. The more he has to drink, the more racist he seems to become.
But it's some sort of special alcoholic beverage, and I don't know what it is. The stranger thing is all of the older African American gentlemen in this club seem to accept this.
It seems like he's making fun of them to their face. To me, it really.
But he's supposed to be turning somehow into being as cool as they are in
he's
there.
Mimicking them, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very odd.
There's a lot of 80s approach to how women are treated and objectified. And unfortunately, one of the climactic lines of the movie is, "You and your faggot friends need to get out of this house."
There's a lot of, which is very 80s. And before, and
they are dressed up like the Mad Max guys. In fact, he said, when the Mad Max guys, we're going to get them. Like, the head biker is literally a guy from the Road Warrior, same actor.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes has a memorable line.
Yes, that's right.
Could you maybe not mention this? I'm a teacher. This is a really great line.
That's funny. There are some John Hughes bits in there that...
But this is the movie out of the John Hughes collection that has aged the worst and that emphasizes everything that, as much as I love John Hughes, just don't fly anymore.
So here's where I'm at with this. And so I mentioned each of these movies have some things which are awful and then some redeeming qualities. And I think I know what he was attempting to do initially, but I feel like he failed at it miserably. But I mean, good for him for at least trying something different and bold. Like, you can't do the same things over and over again. I think that was a little bit, and probably more as a screenwriter in the 90s, one of the problems with Hughes towards the end of his career is Home Alone was an enormous success. He didn't direct it. He wrote it. But then he created one movie after another, which was the Home Alone formula.
Based
so he became
the cute little
kid, and there's villains, and it's really a shame because I think the stuff he was doing in the 80s, and that's not true of everybody. Not everybody was great in the 80s, but the stuff he was doing in the 80s was amazing, and Breakfast Club still works because I show it in my high school classes, and they love it.
Yeah.
It and like the next generation is Mean Girls, fortunately or unfortunately. Those two are...
They sort of ring out.
Yeah, they still kind of connect to them.
It's counterintuitive too, because this is coming off of 16 Candles, which was huge. Breakfast Club, which was huger, and like it didn't. But people were saying that Breakfast Club might have a shot at like Best Picture. Like there was because of how seriously he took his subject matter. To take such a hard left into weird science from there is completely bold and counterintuitive.
It is.
And then he bounced back immediately with Ferris Bueller's Day Off too.
Yeah.
So like,
I mean, it didn't hurt his career.
No.
And for there's some filmmakers that this movie could have tanked their careers. Like they wouldn't be given. But at that point, he had enough, in the bank or enough currency in the bank to be able to have a movie like this happen. Here's my take on what I think he was attempting to do.
Okay.
And you mentioned Her with the previous review of Super. I got Her a lot more from this.
I see.
Yeah. I mean, trying to, with 80s technology, create this perfect woman that will meet all of the needs of this rather adolescent, in this case, they were actually adolescents. With the Joaquin Phoenix and Her, I think it's a delayed thing, very much Arrested Development, but he still has that same kind of, I need a woman that's not going to hurt me. And these boys early on are so afraid. They know nothing about girls. And then, of course, there's the archetypical villain or bullies that show up and pants them and do all that stuff that you'd expect in an 80s movie. So I think it was him attempting to have a movie which looks at the psyche of adolescent boys and how difficult a time they have kind of relating the sexual fantasies, the playboy image of a woman at that time with girls that are their own age. But it just goes really, really wrong in so many places. Like that, the way the house gets destroyed, and there's this like ridiculous party, and we're used to being a party at the end of movies like this, but this was so badly done,
over the top.
Yeah. And I like over the top sometimes.
And the movie is outside reality. They continually they're gonna let whatever happens.
And I'm not even sure. Like I thought early on, okay, here we go downhill. I'm not sure if the racist Chicago jazz club sequence was the lowest point in this movie, because I think it just gets worse and worse and worse.
But
yet the intention behind it, I think, was good. I'm sure definitely at the time there would be, I'm not sure how it did box office, but there would be a lot of people that would go to any John Hughes movie at that time. I'm sure there were high school students that loved it.
I think like it did well enough. It wasn't
as...
It's just not as respected as the rest of his crowd.
And rightly so.
I mean, that She's Having the Baby was the only movie that he made that was just a universal flop. It was successful neither critically, financially, nor in any way.
Yeah.
It just kind of just came and went. Even Curly Sue made money somehow. So
actually, that's
I think there's a bit of a maybe it's not necessarily satirical, but there's the dog that catches the car analogy here. It's like, what do these two teenage boys want more than anything else? A gorgeous supermodel who would do their bidding. And once they have this gorgeous supermodel who will do their bidding, they have no fucking idea what to do with her, right? They're just completely...
She's leading them along.
Exactly. They're utterly helpless. They can barely, talk. And... I think what I enjoyed upon watching it this many years later is the 80s filter of what qualified as cool and sexy. I think Kelly LeBrock is a very beautiful woman, but there are scenes in this movie where she looks kind of ridiculous. She's still beautiful, but ridiculous. It sort of blurs the line. Yeah. And the fashion that they get when they walk out of the room and they start freaking out about how they look. And they did a good job. I mean... Michael C. Hall was already well past high school age. I think
Anthony Michael Hall.
Anthony Michael Hall. Yeah. But his buddy, Elon Mitchell Smith, he's got this weird squeaky voice.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Not his fault. It's just the way he sounds. But in a way, it really helps the character because just the sound of his voice makes you kind of go, oh, I know this kid. I know this kid. He's just this bundle of nerves and need. Yeah. And he's not quite fully bloomed, but he's surrounded by people who have everything figured out, and he's being left behind.
And he's better, I think, between the two guys.
He actually has more of an arc in the story.
Because Anthony Michael Hall, I don't think can carry a movie. At that time, I don't think he could carry the movie. They were trying.
Definitely loved him.
But he was the kid in Vacation. I mean, that's where But he was great in a supporting role in Breakfast Club, but he's the lead this time.
Of the world. There are certain actors that are just better served in small helpings, that are better as your sideline characters.
Yeah.
It's also, again, your celebrity spotting. Robert Downey Jr. plays one of the main adversaries, and he's very young, but still, you can tell, very talented, very, magnetic personality.
I mean, he's got a horrible, two-dimensional character.
And not much to do, but he does a lot with it, considering.
And... It becomes tough when, the bullies then, collaborate with the bullied to create another woman, or
makes you not like them. It makes you like the boys less.
And then the girlfriends, and so there's some moments in there which are really true. I mean, there's these two girls, and these guys are acting like jerks in the mall, and they don't like that, but they're like, well, we can't break up with them because then we'll be alone, and we can't afford to be single, and that's social suicide.
If I broke up with him just because he's a bully, how would that make me look?
Yeah. And which is true. It's true today. As true as it was in the 80s and before that.
Part of his appeal is he's a bad boy.
But the fact that, and again, spoiler alert, that these two dweebs end up with these girls in the end... Which is kind of in the John Hughes fairy tale world. I mean, there's some relationships in the Breakfast Club where you could argue that one day in detention probably would not... But they address that more in Breakfast Club.
One of the biggest leads into why John Hughes is so successful, both with, I think, men and women, is the nerd wish fulfillment thing. Yeah. Everybody wants to be Ducky from, Pretty in Pink, who's, the cool kid who can talk to the girls, but instead of being left in the sidelines, we want to believe he's going to get the girl, right? Yeah. And, the most obvious version of this, one of his later screenplays, I don't know if it's over or underrated, but it's always stuck with me. Jennifer Connelly starring Career Opportunities. John Hughes wrote the screenplay, and it's about the nerdiest guy in the town being locked overnight in a Walmart or something with the hottest girl in town.
Yeah.
And they get to know each other, and lo and behold, it's the complete ridiculous wish fulfillment fantasy. But... it has legs. It works for him over and over.
I almost forgot about that movie, so thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. We can talk about Career Opportunities after I press stop, and there's an interesting history with me. I will always have a certain degree of affection for this movie, but I think at this point it has more to do with where and who I was when I first saw it. Now it's this sort of piece of antiquity and nostalgia, and it kind of becomes bittersweet because the things that were so fresh and new and adventurous when I saw them as a kid are now not just old, but genuinely outdated.
It happens. I mean, the thing I was wrestling with this movie is if John Hughes' name was on Chillerama instead of this movie,
right?
Would I have been like trying to figure out like the noble intentions of it, or would I have just dismissed it? And
it's genuinely funny. It has genuinely funny lines in it and genuinely warm moments in it in a way that Chillerama never even attempted.
Yeah.
So that's where it tips his hand as being like a John Hughes joint.
But I feel like the very beginning was definitely his. And I have to remind myself in some of the John Hughes screenplays that I like, he does repeat himself. And if you look at National Lampoon's Vacation, there's a ton of incredibly misogynistic stuff in there. But often there will be, Clark Griswold does not end up with in the end of the day, the supermodel.
He has dirty fantasies, he has bad thoughts, but the forefront thing, that the engine that runs his life is his love for his family, and we like him, right? It's not a commentary on it; it's just a reflection of its time.
Yeah. And this is also, they're in high school, and we don't know 2 weeks after the story ends, they're probably broken up. I mean,
exactly.
They haven't met the loves of their lives.
Well, stick with these guys, girls. I think they're going to do okay. They seem to know their way around computers. And
yes,
that would play.
Well, they're a lot better than. As much as I'd rather see Robert Downey Jr. anchoring a film than Anthony Michael Hall. So.
If you want to ride their road, you gotta know the rules. Never play cowboy.
School's out, boys.
In a room full of Indians.
It's better to be dead and cool than alive and uncool.
Never go into a bar.
I can't watch this.
Unless you're willing to get smashed.
Getting pretty good up to there.
Never ride a Brahma bull.
Strap on your seatbelt, get ready to fly.
When you can take a bus.
Does that look like the work of two-bit hoods?
Yeah, pros would have used my keys.
Never rob a bank.
Get back what's mine and kill these men, okay?
Run by bigger crooks than you.
Hey man, that's what friendship's all about.
Never resist an arresting officer.
Okay, cowboy, let's blow off some steam.
We gotta talk to the man upstairs.
Stay on my tail.
No problem.
Never start at the bottom when you want the man on top. Never dive from the 20th floor.
We're gonna jump.
I hate you for this, Harley.
I hate you, Harley!
Unless the pool is full.
You guys are a piece of work.
Shoot him!
Mickey Rourke, Don Johnson, Harley Davidson, and the Marlboro Man.
I can't believe you shot me.
So nobody remembers Harley Davidson in the Marlboro Man.
I do.
You do?
I remember, the summer of 1991.
Yeah. It did not make a big impression when it came out. It was neither well received critically nor in the box office. And it's, kind of feel like you could see this coming. I mean, the most edgy new thing in the movie is that it dares to be set in the near future. But it's basically a heist gone wrong, and then these guys are being hunted down by gangsters. A couple of dim-witted, rough-hewn heroes who get in over their head and have to, get back in the corner and have to shoot their way out. Full of surprise and laughs. It's so 90s. It's like so ridiculously 90s. But I have to wonder, I mean, not that it necessarily looks horrible, but what would make this look good on paper? And what would make you think, like, when you got this recipe, when you're like, yeah, Mickey Rourke is our Harley Davidson. And yes, Don Johnson of Miami Vice, which was popular 8 years ago on television, is our Marlboro Man. And yeah, it'll be a good idea. Everybody will be named after some sort of TV or pop culture or you know,
Virginia Slim,
Calamity Jane. Like again, we're just gonna for no reason. For no reason. It's just sort of an aspect or an affect of the movie. It's a very strange buddy comedy action shoot 'em up that repeatedly offends credulity. Like, there's ludicrous stuff that happens in the movie. But you know what? It's not boring.
No. Not at all.
And as I said before we hit record, apparently everybody was in this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
great
faces.
cast.
At the time, maybe they weren't that big, but like you look at it now, and it's kind of sick, the supporting cast in it. So I guess my opening salvo would be twofold. I mean, why was it ignored, and do you think it deserved to be?
Okay. I just want to state, though, this was the movie, when I looked at the list, that I've always wanted to see, and this was the reason I decided to be the guest for this entire program.
This is
because of this. I was always curious about it. I remember when it came out in theaters, and I just had not seen it and always wanted to see it, and I was just really curious about it. And I don't think it should be ignored. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed almost every moment of this, and this was the movie I thought was going to be the most misogynistic, and yet I really kind of had to struggle to see, because actually the few, there aren't many female characters, but the few that are in there actually show some strength. The wrestler, Big John Studd,
right? Is a real issue with.
He's this big, enormous guy who can beat up anybody. But his girlfriend is Vanessa Williams, and she just owns him. And she just totally like destroys him publicly, and he would totally kill for her. And she has some strength. And I thought there's Don Johnson has this girlfriend or former girlfriend who's we sort of discover later on is a police officer, and I thought, oh, here we go, this is going to be something where, okay, we finally have a female character that's in an important position, which is a profession which has been dominated by men, and then she's going to be treated as a sex object. I don't think she is at all.
If anything, she treats
him
as a sex object.
Yeah. So. And this is
Chelsea Fields. I've always thought she was a very beautiful actress, actually.
Yeah, and she's great. And I don't know, like, because it's an all-star cast, but I'm not sure what happened to her after this. She could have been.
She was in The Last Boy Scout. She did a few things
91
in the late 80s, early 90s, and then I just.
Well, some people, they have families, and there's such cruelty in Hollywood, as we now know. So we can see people backing away from that world, but she's great. I really, really enjoyed this movie, and what made me think of is a movie that perhaps Robert Rodriguez would make in his kind of grindhouse homages, because of the all-star cast. And maybe the other thought was he sort of helped Mickey Rourke get back on his feet. A lot of people mention The Wrestler as being a big comeback project, but he had a major role in Sin City,
right.
And took up most of the story and gave a great performance in that. And Don Johnson ended up in one of the Machete movies as well. So Robert Rodriguez is somebody who remembers these guys who were either through
dusts them off and throws them off.
Yeah, and I like that, and I feel like this is made in very professional way, this film, but that kind of wink to the audience stuff wasn't happening in the summer of 1991. And 91, that was a major year. Thelma and Louise came out, which was, and this in a way is kind of that kind, traditionally what that kind of movie was, this buddy movie, but Thelma and Louise changed that, and Boys in the Hood was the talk of that summer because for so many different reasons. So I could see a movie like this getting lost because
It's
great
funny
cinema was coming out that summer, and never mind Terminator 2. I mean,
it looked like another action buddy comedy, which it both is and isn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that you say Robert Rodriguez, because I thought this was kind of like a wannabe John Carpenter movie.
Okay.
It runs more on its attitude and its sort of like vibe. Like the movie it has really strong moments, and it's sort of more of those little isolated moments. And the Western milieu, that it's simultaneously in the future and a Western.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of hilarious that he chooses to put his bike down. He like literally shoots the bike, and he's gonna steal his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend's bike just out of like petty vengeance. And he's not even gonna leave a drivable bike there for the guy because it's but it is weirdly the component parts more than the sum of the parts that make it work. Mm-hmm. I'm really charmed by him, the gang of buddies that we're introduced to, but I know by the program of this sort of script to not get too attached to them, because
there's a lot of really good folks in there. Amazing.
All of them are going to be dead very soon. The movie's not called Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man and gang.
Because it looks like it starts to look like an ensemble piece, and then you kind of know something's going to happen.
They want to steal money from an armored van so that they can save their favorite bar and hang out, and repair a damaged friendship from back in the day.
Because the bar is being taken over by this evil bank
entity represented by Tom Sizemore. And so they pull off this heist, which is very entertaining and funny as they do it. And then at the end, the unfortunate thing is that instead of money, they find this. Do you remember what they call the drug?
Crystal Dream.
Crystal Dream.
Crystal Dream, which I don't know if that was a take on crystal meth.
Maybe. It's a future drug, MacGuffin thing. And so, then it's like, look, we've really stepped in it, but these guys, they're businessmen. They don't want to lose their profit, and really, the amount of money we're going to need is small beans compared to them. If they can get their product back for that, But of course, Tom Sizemore is way too evil to be allowed anyone to steal from him. So
and
he sends a bunch of henchmen, led by
Daniel Baldwin,
to come and shoot these guys and kill these guys, and they do. And
they're bulletproof too.
They have a tracking device on them, which takes them way too long to figure out. And there's just a couple of things, like in the movie, the small changes, but in a way big changes. Like narratively, it's a big reveal to them when it's like, man, we really can't shoot those guys. They really seem bulletproof.
Yeah.
Like they spend so much time shooting them again and again and again, and then all of a sudden they have this epiphany. What if we shoot them in the head, the one area of the body which is exposed? And it's like they had this like aha moment. And I'm like, seriously? That is fucking sloppy, you guys. Like even for a movie this silly, that is sloppy. And there is a memorable and controversial sequence where they are backed into a corner on the top of this skyscraper.
Oh, yeah.
And they drop like 20 floors into a
swimming pool,
and just brush that shit off. And they ask the audience to just brush that shit off. And I do, because the movie is fun and stupid, but you have to let shit go. If you fight with this movie at all, you will win, is my point. I have a lot of fun with it, but I just roll with the punches. Don't question anything that happens in this movie. Just count on the next scene being action-packed and funny, and it probably will be.
But it's a really, really good action movie. I mean, I've seen more respected action movies which have giant holes like what you're talking about, and at the time, of Lethal Weapon, they had to have a scene where the heroes leap off of some impossible space.
Big budget action has never been known for having airtight plots.
No,
I recognize that, and will concede that point. But even in that universe, if John McClane jumped off the 25th floor of Nakatomi and landed in a swimming pool, and we were expected to think, that'll do it, he'll be fine. Like, no. I don't know what they make future swimming pools.
But you're mentioning the best of that genre. I mean, I'm talking about
But again, the Con Airs of the world, then, you know, like the Con Air has a completely Wile E. Coyote death for its main villain.
Yes,
so
that's a better comparison.
They're stupid and they know they're stupid. And I think this movie, it is dumb fun, but it knows that it's dumb fun.
Yeah.
But I do think you have to let it be dumb fun. It's not just dumb fun enough to wash over you. I think you have to want to meet it. Do you know what I'm saying? Or do you think it will just work to anybody? Anybody could just turn on.
I don't think if you don't like action movies, I'd stay away from this. And actually, on the whole, I don't really like action movies that much. But this one had some sort of a stylistic quality that I was interested in. It got me early. And again, this really was a surprise to me because I thought, okay, there's a reason I haven't seen this movie, and I've known about it since its release. But it was so much better than I expected.
That is the victory of the movie.
Yeah.
We expect to laugh at the movie, and we end up laughing with it.
Yes.
That's why I submit it as a cult classic.
Yes.
I also think that it's like underseen. Again, nobody saw it in 1991.
No.
And a lot of people, when I mention it, or if I do, are like, who's it and what now?
Yeah.
And like, I guess I can be sympathetic that they're not all jazzed about a Mickey Rourke movie from 30 years ago.
But he was doing some good stuff. And I've always liked Don Johnson.
His peak era was late 80s, early 90s, as far as I'm concerned. Like the Angel Heart kind of era.
Yes, that was amazing.
It was where he did some of his best acting.
Yeah.
So.
And Angel Heart is a much better movie than this.
Oh, no, yeah. But like, and he's kind of morphed into a cartoon of himself in later life. But no, I mean, it was sort of a last cry, gasp for Don Johnson as a movie star, but he fell back on his Nash Bridges or whatever TV show.
That's right.
And Mickey Rourke decided that maybe he'd try boxing for a while and permanently fucked up his face. And for all of that, we have Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man to thank. But who knows? I mean, I think it deserves its day in court. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's not smart at all. But it's a lot of fun.
Lots of style.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of style. And I think there are a lot of people that will like it. I think it's worth checking out. Like movie geeks like myself should see this movie.
One thing that weirdly worked for me, I don't know why, and it worked for me in 1991 and it still works for me today, this business with Don Johnson's boots.
That was cool. Yeah.
His dad gave him these boots, and they've been worn out probably since he had them when he first got them.
Yeah.
And they're more duct tape than boots.
Oh, yeah.
And he refuses to replace them. They're his daddy's boots. And then at the end, the Tom Sizemore character is trying to drag him out of this window to his death. And the boots finally are torn, and the bad guy falls to his death. And
it's a great payoff.
It's completely on the nose, but I really think it works. There's something like, oh no, his boot. But of course, his boot. It was like destiny.
It was.
You know?
Well, and you spend a lot of time, if you're listening carefully, almost all of Don Johnson's lines start off with some statement about his father.
My before he left this shitty world.
Yeah,
my father told me.
He starts everything with that, and if you're not paying attention, you're like, well, I don't know, like why he's doing that, but then there's a reason, and it leads to that story, which leads to the payoff and the climax of the film. And
there's a really well shot shootout. That makes sense. A really well directed shootout that happens in an airplane graveyard.
Yes.
And it's established that Harley cannot shoot.
Yes.
Shit.
Yeah.
The Marlboro Man is fucking lethal.
Yes.
But the badass biker dude is terrible. And it's a really great scene. Of course, Don Johnson's his hostage. It's down to Mickey Rourke to shoot him.
He has to shoot him. He has only so many bullets.
Yeah. He knows that there's a better than average chance that he's not going to be able to pull this off. And when he inevitably takes a round in the arm, his reaction is so perfect because he both over and underreacts to it at the same time. He kind of looks at it and then looks back at his buddy and is like, God damn. And it also surprised me how much the stakes were working for me in the scene. I was like, I don't want either of these guys to get shot. They've already lost too much. They can't lose anymore. And for a movie as ridiculous as that to accomplish it, for the sentimental twist of the boots to pay off, a lot more was worth than it did.
Well, and they talk about how expensive the bullets are for this gun. That never happens in movies. So I think it's a well above average action movie. Maybe it didn't need to be set whatever it was 6 years in the future, but that was kind of the John Carpenter part that and sort of the design of the Daniel Baldwin gang there. I
think it was just to give it a little bit of otherness, a little bit of reach to excuse some of the.
Well, the Pasadena airport or something was a big deal.
If you can find a copy of this movie, and it's not easily done anymore, give it a day in court.
Yes, please do.
Edward, I know that we haven't spoken in a few years. I need your help. I have a daughter. Her name is Rowan. She has been missing for 2 weeks now. I fear she is in danger, so now I turn to you. Be careful and believe nothing that you see or hear.
Lost your bearings?
Oh, hey. Sorry, snuck up on me there.
This is private property.
Do you know her?
I don't recognize this child.
Welcome. My little girl is still here. She has been taken by who I don't know.
I'll find her.
If she existed, we would know of her.
Whose desk is this, Rowan? Hello?
You suspect foul play.
The Wicker Man returns.
Who's the Wicker Man?
I'm gonna search every inch of this town.
She'll burn to death. She burned to death.
So Neil LaBute.
He's a genius.
You think so? I mean, I definitely, I get that he makes tough scripts and that he really enjoys pressing buttons. He's as sort of known for being willing to just do uncomfortable subject matter as he is, for being a craftsman. It's just he's willing to write about shit that's ugly, and he somehow gets away with it. One of the most uncomfortable date movies I've ever had in my life was taking a girl to see her friends and neighbors.
Oh, that's an uncompromising movie.
Not a date movie.
Not a date movie.
Not necessarily a bad movie, but not a date movie.
No.
Again, movies like Nurse Betty, I don't know who the audience is for. I kind of like that it exists, but I don't know who that movie is for.
Probably me.
In the Company of Men is one of the most brutal, ugly movies ever. So I've always, sort of towed the line. Is he one of these guys that just lives on exploitation? Is he a Lars von Trier or a Larry Clark? Or does he actually have something to say other than just wanting to make us uncomfortable? The thing is, when you come to a remake of The Wicker Man, I know it's a very famous cult horror movie, but it's also, as much as I love it, a very dated movie. And I think that you could probably, it's a tough enough story and an interesting enough story. You could probably remake it in an interesting way or take an angle on it that would be interesting. And Neil LaBute, who, is a very accomplished, stage and screenwriter, tackling the subject matter, maybe that could be really interesting. And Nicolas Cage hadn't, fully cartooned out into Ghost Rider territory.
Yeah, he was still
So there was enough about this project that it could look good on paper, so that he was able to get people like Ellen Bernstein in this movie.
She's one of the best method actors.
It's a fucking awful movie. Like, it's an aggravating movie. There's some people who say that this is like a so bad it's good type of experience, but I have to say, upon watching it again, to my shame, for the third time in my life, I hated hated the Wicker Man.
And not in a complimentary hated.
And mainly not in a compliment. There are a few moments in the movie that are undeniably, unintentionally hilarious.
Oh, yeah,
and
I know.
Those moments are like the best kind of bad movie. But I think what we see here is the tipping point for Nicolas Cage. After this Wicker Man movie, it was kind of hard to take Cage completely serious anymore.
He was a producer on the movie as well.
But he didn't write it, and he didn't direct it.
No.
A lot of heat gets thrown on Cage, and he is big and over the top. But the problem is the screenplay. The problem is LeBout. He failed about as epically as you could imagine at making a scary or interesting or subversive movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe there's things to be said, or maybe there's some interesting satire, or maybe, it would be bold to make some hard points against feminism or radical feminism. And if as much as people like to make a bath out of toxic masculinity, does it not make sense that then toxic femininity would also exist to balance the scales, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's bedrock of really interesting shit to build on. And what we have here is a catastrophe.
Yeah, and I haven't taken the time to investigate, because I know there's a lot of things out there about why this went so wrong.
Right.
But I haven't looked at it. But I really feel that at the time, who had more power in Hollywood, Neil LaBute or Nicolas Cage?
Probably Cage.
This was a star vehicle for Cage. I wonder if there were things that LaBute wanted to change and fix, and Cage stopped him from being able to do that. But that's me speculating. I haven't looked at that. I haven't seen a whole series of videos where people blame each other or whatever. And there should be, because I should learn in some ways that when a movie appears with this amazing cast, amazing writer, director, whether you think he's amazing or not, I don't know, but I think he's a bit better as a playwright than he is as a screenwriter or a filmmaker, because he's also made some other stuff that's not that great.
He fits better into the stage than he does to the screen in some ways. I would agree there.
Yeah.
For me, the jury remains out on LaBute, to be honest. I'm almost ready to write him off as just like this guy who just wants to stir the pot but doesn't really have anything to say.
But what has he done lately as far as movies? I mean, Lakeview Terrace, I think, wasn't that him?
That was him, but yeah. I don't know what
and I don't know anybody who saw it, so yeah. I can't comment on it, but that's even worse than The Wicker Man. At least people talk about this. But I was so interested in seeing this because look at all these great people, but I heard there was no publicity for this thing beforehand, so I think they all knew that they had an expensive dead fish that they had to, throw out there and then recover what they could. But it shocked me how bad it was, and I was laughing, and I'm not supposed to be laughing at the climax of that film. You're not laughing at the original, at the climax of the film. And the only change I could see in there is that the original Wicker Man is a comment on religion, and there actually is like a genuine dialogue back and forth about Christianity versus pagan religions, and some great scenes in there. There isn't anything like that in here, and there was an opportunity when you have Ellen Burstyn, who again is one of the greats, and Nicolas Cage, who is like out of control. And pairing those two together for a scene is interesting, but I think if there had been a scene in there where they could talk about gender issues, because I mean, it seemed pretty slow for him to realize that this island is almost totally women, and the men he tries to talk to do not speak to him, and there's eventually like a payoff, which they didn't exploit, and I think they should have exploited to make that a little bit more horrifying. If in fact this was meant to be a horror movie, as I think it was supposed to be, and is not. It is a gong show from beginning to end. There are some pretty, at the time, talented actors in this. Lily Sobieski has a thankless role.
Ugh.
Like I think the highlight for her is she gets into some sort of a fist fight with Nicolas Cage. She gets
gets
knocked
her
out.
Ass kicked, 'cause
you know,
clearly he's twice her fucking weight. It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
And the equivalent of her character is this in the original is this big. Well, he wasn't that big, I guess, but the hotel owner, and it was a little bit more of a kind of a fair fight in that one. This didn't make any sense, and there are several bits that are so bad, and I'm sure going to talk about some of them. But the climax is so laughable. The post-production with these voiceovers, it's some of the worst voiceover stuff. Oh, crunch! You broke my leg! Oh, you... And he does one of these awful, misogynistic, you bitches type of speeches. It's terrible.
Unfinished. It feels like they didn't finish the special effects at a few parts. So there was like stuff that they were going to get to that they didn't get to. The frustrating thing, like in the first movie, I kind of felt like it was kind of odd and there was like a weird countercultural exploration, but it was mainly more weird and off-putting. It was the ending that kind of redeemed the movie for me. It was just that real shocker ending.
It's almost a musical. It's so strange. They're singing and it's very Scottish type of.
But that sucker punch ending and the fact that everything was this horrifying manipulation.
Yeah.
Now part of it, it's by the nature of being a remake. Presumably that is spoiled, so you know where it's going to go. So there's a certain inevitability. It doesn't mean that the movie still couldn't be good, but the gotcha factor is 100% gone. But all I have is questions. We haven't really talked plot, but Nicolas Cage hears from his old lover that her daughter has gone missing on this island she's living in, this weird cult, and that he should, show up and find her. This is all launched off the precipice of this tragedy. He was witness to a terrible car accident in which a small child burned in a car. That entire wing of the movie could be completely excised and he wouldn't miss it or know that it was missing. But he keeps on seeing images of little girls getting run over or burned, and that this is some sort of redemption. The fact that it's his child and she's missing was not motivation enough, right? He needed this other fucking layer of something. And the entire movie, Jason, is him asking people questions and them plainly just not answering him and him just shrugging it off. There's no follow-up, right? Where were you Thursday? Oh, Thursdays are always great days. Like, those are the kind of questions, and those are the kind of answers. We never move forward. I feel his frustration. I'm ready to punch somebody by the time he starts punching people. Then the movie tries to go, well, this isn't working, so let's throw a random jump scare. No, that's not working. Let's hit them with troubling imageries. There's a series where he just opens a series of doors and there's a random horrible image between each door. Like, those people spent their days waiting in queue in line for him to show up and open that door to see the disturbing moments. Like, what were they doing? All I have is questions. Like, anybody on set, any moment could ask any question. The whole house of cards falls apart. So to me, there's no way. I don't understand how LeBute. I don't know what approach he was taking. I don't know what he thought he was doing. I don't know if he thought he was being subversive or there was some sort of meta angle to it. I am baffled from wall to wall.
I know.
What were you even fucking attempting? And yes, Nicolas Cage is hilariously over the top and flailing the whole time because that's what he's being asked to do. There's a whole sequence where he thinks he sees the girl drowning under the water, and he dives into the water and he grabs the girl, but then it's not the girl, and then he wakes up, but then he's not awake. There's another. This is.
It's so It's
Molly Parker.
It's so bad.
Love.
That's the other shame in this.
I love Molly Parker.
Nothing to do.
She has nothing to do, and as amazing as an actress as she is, she can't make it work. Fun note. Do you know that she plays two characters in the movie?
Yes. She's a twin for no reason.
For no reason.
I guess there's some twins in there. There's those creepy twins.
The old lady blind witches.
Yeah, which I've seen in a million things. And
the first time I saw it, I actually missed that. When I was rewatching it, I was like, she's a twin? Really? And again, why?
Yeah.
So many questions.
Didn't I just talk to you? No, that's my sister. Okay. Well, let me just go on to the next part.
This unbelievably mamby-pamby, simplistic, like, approach to, like, these women clearly hate men. They clearly raising children to hate men. And, like, their evil is on their face. The smugness is on their face. This is the worst detective in the world. He has no danger detector. No. His fucking wife, Willow, I can't remember.
Yeah, Willow
is remember the name of her, the actress, but, like, she is the most fucking frustrating character. Like, of all the characters who don't answer questions, like, this is your child. You sent me a letter. Now you're telling me it's my child. Can you help me at all? No.
I'm under their control.
I feel like he's driven mad by his surroundings, and yet I still can't like him. And
no.
I fucking hate the cult of women, and I think that could have been interesting, even if they did want to make them evil. But, like, take an angle on it, or make them, smug. The trap that the guy falls into in the original one is haunting because everybody is so warm to him. People are offering him free drinks and sausage because they know he's winding out the clock on his life, and they want to contribute to the sacrifice. They want to be part of it. They're warm, and that makes it.
And he's kind of a pious guy, but yet you understand where he's coming from. And there's this great scene instead of that big sequence with this over-the-top car accident and this conversation with this other police officer, and there's this scene where she turns into bees, which has no purpose that I could see. It takes a long time to get to the island, and it's scene 2 in the original Wicker Man. And they just have a bit of a communion scene, which has relevance because it dictates his life, and it's about Christ's sacrifice. And then at the end, he becomes the sacrifice. Yeah. So for their religion, so it all works and nothing works here. And the only adjustment I saw is the religious. It's about religion, and this is about gender. I don't know how they got the women that they got to be in this film, because it gives feminism such a bad name, and there are people who actually believe that's what feminism is how it's portrayed in this movie, and that made me really mad when I first saw it.
This cartoon version of, like, radicalized feminism, and that's just LeBeau pushing buttons, and he loves to do that. I think he knew that people would be offended and angered by that, and I think the actor just showed up because he's Neil LeBeau. He's a legitimate guy.
But where's his dialogue? Because his dialogue is fantastic, and his plays in The Company of Men and Your Friends and Neighbors, that's all there, like the horrible speeches. But in this,
he's never been asked to do a procedural before. Yeah. He's never given a character a puzzle to solve. He's just let assholes be assholes. This is why the jury's out on Neil LeBeau.
Like, was this a for paid job? Like, did the studio say
he wrote and directed it? I have to assume that it was, like, if it was offered to him, he said yes. He saw something he could make out of it. I am starting to suspect that he's more interested in making people uncomfortable than he is in telling a story. Because that's where he started, and that's where
and I don't want to go into this because it's too long. Like the story of how he became an artist and his background. I think the first shot of the movie is the biggest mistake. We see an uncredited cameo by Aaron Eckhart, who was his muse and he's worked with for a million years. Aaron Eckhart is there, and instead of following Aaron Eckhart into a different movie, no, we let him walk off screen and we follow Nicolas Cage in this disaster. The most horrifying thing is the talent of the people that put this together, and that was such a dud. I mean,
the internet had a field day over Nicolas Cage punching all these women. Honestly, I don't have a problem with him using physical violence. I mean, we know how evil this cult is. They're going to kill him. His life is at stake, whether he knows it or not. But, like, there's something really strange. He punches into unconsciousness 3 different women in this movie. And it's not a fight. It's not like, with the exception of Lily Sobieski, who actually throws a few punches first. Yeah. Every other time, he just flat out cold cocks a woman. And it seems really strange.
Yeah.
And again, spoilers, he gets burned in the Wicker Man. And I feel
so bad.
nothing. I feel nothing. I don't feel sorry for him. I don't feel happy for them. There are no winners, no losers. And I don't know if it's in your version, but in the unrated version that I watched, we then cut to a bar, and James Franco.
Yeah.
And what's his face? Josh Ritter, Jason Ritter's son.
Yeah.
Or John Ritter's son.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Is it Jason Ritter? I can't remember. Anyway, there are these two.
Jason. Yeah.
There are these two young cops just about to put their badges on, and lo and behold, these women are there to seduce them. Women are evil. They're manipulators. They have this plan to shape your entire life to become this terrible fate. The mentality of the movie is off. There's no scares to it. The dialogue, as I've said, is so fucking frustrating. Circular question. The scene where he talks to Ellen Burstyn.
That's terrible. Some of it was taken from the original, but not. Most of it is not.
Yeah, well, in the original, he's really judging harshly the pagan religion because he's a super pious dude. We don't get any kind of piety out of Nicolas Cage at all. But he talks to her with about 10 minutes before getting around to asking about the little girl. Why are you there? What is your motivation, Oscar-winning actor Nicolas Cage? Neil LaBute, if he's a detective trying to find his daughter who he believes may have been either burned to death or will be burned to death, where's the fucking urgency? Yeah. Where are the stakes? Why don't I care? Why don't you care? This movie is god awful.
It is. And it just given what they had to work with and comparing it to some of the other movies on their list, even though there were some amazing casts in them.
Yeah.
This is really the biggest letdown.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they had the source material, they had the writer, maybe director. I think he's more of a writer than he's a director. They had the cast. I mean, maybe we didn't know that Nick Cage was moving into whatever he's moved into. Yeah. But there were a ton of other people in this movie that are amazing that could potentially hold a movie up, even if he was, doing his wild stuff, which he's always done to some extent. He needs a really strong director to focus him, and that's the difference between great Nicolas Cage and what we often get.
The thing that makes the movie almost an experience worth enduring is that it is almost fascinating how nothing went right.
I don't know how that happened.
I can't even say, well, at least Dylan Bernstein gave a great performance. No. Or at least Molly Parker rendered, adequately. There's not a scene, a moment, a scare, like a standout. If when I buy an album, I will, after I've listened to it, I think to myself, what are the standout tracks? Mm-hmm. What are the 3 or 4 things that really, leap out at me, right? There are no standout tracks.
Nothing.
There are no peaks, only valleys.
The only things I remember, and I don't know, thankfully, I'd forgotten a lot of stuff from when I saw it in the theater, but the things I remember most are the worst things, the climax of the movie and Cage shouting out and really awful sound effects and the stuff with the bees, which is...
Okay, he's allergic to bees. I know, we could do this all night, but... So he gets stung by a bee and he runs in panic where? Into a field of beehives. Pick any other fucking direction. Again, it's a really basic question. Where do you go? Run towards civilization or the beehives? Pick one. I'm going beehives. My throat's closing and a bee sting could kill me, but I'm going to see if one of these bees will resuscitate me. It's gobsmackingly stupid.
Well, and it seems like he recovers the next day, but they talk about how he almost died. Another really picky one is he goes around in this suit. He's underwater several times. I had a whole list of things that he doesn't seem to sweat at any point. The suit is in perfect shape at the end of the movie as it is. He doesn't change clothes other than when he gets into a bear suit, which is another one of the things
Surreal.
I will never be able to remove from my mind.
You can't unsee that.
No. It is awful. It is awful.
So it's already got this cult crowd around it, and there's this weird audience that says that Wicker Man is so bad it's good, and I'm here to submit that it is not so bad it's good. It is kind of a fascinating catastrophe in that a lot of really smart, really talented people got together and made something really stupid and unenjoyable.
It's almost lifeless.
But that's it. And I don't understand how people enjoy it. I don't like the cult crowd around this one is a little bit mystifying. This is more sad than funny.
I think people. There's a generation of people that have only known this version of Nicolas Cage, and they're fascinated by how he is a working actor doing what he does on a regular basis. And that's maybe what has prompted this. But other than that, I don't get why people would waste their time with this.
If you haven't seen this version of Wicker Man, good. All right, Mr. Dubray, thank you for returning to Rank and Review once again. What a nosebleed-inducing list of movies that we have here. I am not at all suspicious of what your last ranking movie is, but I am curious to hear what the rank is.
Okay.
But please do not disappoint me. Please at least tell me that we agree.
On one of these.
One of these.
Yeah.
If not.
I hope so. Given what they had... I think you could say that technically some things are better in The Wicker Man than some of the other ones, but they had a lot more to work with, and it's just a bigger letdown. And just talking to you made me angry all over again about this thing. Yeah, the Wicker Man's number 6. It's the worst one on this list, and it's the worst one on most lists. You could come up with 5 shows and find some sort of a theme from it, and it would be the worst in almost all of them. Just a giant letdown of a film. Number 5, even though I know what it was trying to do, and I think it would satisfy those who like what it was doing, and I tried to find some redeeming qualities, but Chillerama it just didn't work for me. And I think when it was the first one on this list, preparing for the show that I saw, and it didn't age in my mind with time. I was just kind of like cringing about different things that I just am remembering and did not like about it. So it was actually darn close to being the worst for me. But again, they seem like they're independent filmmakers, and there's something kind of brave about what they're doing. Yet I don't think it just doesn't work for me. Number 4, and I hate to, because this is the one that you love. The most. I hate to pick on Freaked, but
there it be.
I liked some of the setup. I liked the kind of late 80s jokes in there. I liked the cast in probably more so in different things, and I enjoyed listening to you describe things that make you laugh. And I wish I could laugh
with me, but
with you. But I didn't laugh a whole lot at this. I don't know if maybe I was going into I have to review this and a little bit too serious. And if I watch it again, I'll get more out of it. Number 3 is Weird Science. It's definitely a bad movie. I think the setup had potential, as awful and sexist as it is, and what he might have been trying to do. But I don't know if it's because John Hughes is listed as the writer-director, if I'm giving this movie more credit than it deserves. There are some really awful, awful moments in it, and it is so over the top at the end. But I think he was kind of allowed that, and there are 1 or 2 things I liked about it, but on the whole I didn't. Then we get to the 2 I liked. And I genuinely thumbs up liked, and I didn't expect to like anything in this show. I like Super a lot. It was actually number 2 for me. Just the drawback for me is that Liv Tyler is a really interesting actor. She's not often given enough to do.
And this is one of those cases.
She had, it was almost, less than a 2-dimensional role. She's thrown around for the convenience of the plot.
I'm sad, I'm pathetic, I need to be rescued. That's basically her arc.
But it is, for somebody who, whatever you can say about my sense of humor and what I find entertaining, there's bits that I was like, you laughed at Freaked a lot. I laughed and I laughed and laughed, and I had so much fun. Super was very entertaining. And Ellen Page is just killer in this in more ways than one. I wish I could. She was doing more movies now. She isn't doing. She's kind of scaled back a little bit, but it was like a much more R-rated, darker follow-up to Juno, and
the energy in that performance is unlike anything I've seen her do, and I loved it.
And she took a risk with it. I mean, it wasn't. You can't get. I'm not sure.
It's a big
we often
swing.
talk about Natalie Portman,
yeah.
Which is more me talking about Natalie Portman and infusing it into your show. But I'm not sure Natalie Portman at that equivalent stage would have taken that role or done what Ellen Page does. She makes herself look ridiculous in many scenes, and it is so worthwhile. So I'd recommend it to people. And one that maybe not everybody would be as excited about, but to me, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man was
number 1.
Number 1 for me. I think it was consistent in the genre. You do have to like stretch your imagination, and I think it's a terrific action movie, great cast, and I actually like Don Johnson, and I like Mickey Rourke, and I like when they were getting more work than they get now, and it's an effective buddy movie. I think things were changing in cinema in the summer of 1991, and maybe that's why this movie didn't get that much attention, but it fulfilled all of my expectations, and in some strange way, it's the least misogynistic of the 6 movies that we
and considering
watched.
It came out of 1991, no one would have seen that coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with a movie with that title, I mean, you'd think it'd be the opposite. So
we have different lists.
I knew. We will never get there. I don't
this
think.
is but especially with a list like this, when the movies are that bonkers, it really comes down to the litmus is your personal taste. So yeah, I mean, I like Freaked more than
yeah, and I knew
clearly. The Wicker Man's the worst.
Yes,
I mean, not just of the list. I mean, it's just the worst.
It is.
It's the worst.
It's got to be one of the worst movies of all time.
I've said
in
the
history
past
of cinema
that it's wasteful to use an emotion as powerful as hate on a movie, but I kind of hate that movie.
Well, you said I hate this movie. I think it was like 5 extra hates than Roger Ebert used for his book. So
not a fan.
No.
And I can't be part of this revisionist history that it's so bad it's good, or that it's just hilarious. There's a couple of moments that are hilarious, but it's a long slog. And
to get to those
moments is just not worth it. Chillerama is in 5th place.
So we agree on those two.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's just too much. It's too much. Part of it is the anthology format. You're getting different ingredients cut into the stew just by nature of the amount of cooks that you have. Like, who knows what put what in? It's like everybody spits in a jar and then someone has to drink it. It lacks the uniformity. So again, I think it would have been interesting, just to be harder, make harder cuts. You could maybe even have the full films as special features on the DVD, just give us the highlight reel for the movie, because it's too much for what it is. If you're going to be this offensive, this abrasive, and this sort of in your face, you should be efficient with it. And like I've said this before about other anthology movies, the first VHS film, for instance, I think if it wasn't 2 hours, if they managed to get it down to 90 minutes, it would have been helpful for the audience. Between the shaky cam and the shrillness of everything, after 2 hours, people are just like, when? And that's kind of how I felt with Chillerama. I was done with it long before the movie was done with me.
I think even just 3, like have three of these and cut down films, if they're going to keep the format that they kept.
Yeah.
But again, your suggestions are so good to have that. We're stuck in this car with people we probably don't like, commenting on some B movie. I mean, that'd be a lot of fun.
They just sort of were over reliant on the sort of anthology format. So, what are you gonna do? All the way in 4th position, and it kind of hurts for me to put a John Hughes movie as low as that, but that's where Weird Science ended up. I do want to say that there is a lot of heart and a lot of charm to the movie, and it could have been way grosser. Like, imagine like if they put like an American Pie kind of attitude onto this story and made it like hard R, like sick, gross perversion, and like they could have absolutely gone there and gone for the cheap sort of perverted thrills. And they didn't do that. And the other thing that I don't think we mentioned before, and it kind of like made me a little bit verklempt, seeing such a young Bill Paxton.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention Paxton.
Just killing it as this bully asshole older brother who gets turned into a talking pile of shit, memorably, for a good portion of the movie. But it's funny because he's so young and still rock solid supporting work.
You like Paxton in it?
Well,
I like to remember him in many other things.
No, he's really over the top in it, and he's got that terrible snort, chortle cackle. But he's memorable. Chet's memorable. He's a memorable ingredient of the movie.
Yeah,
and I just miss the man. I miss.
No, that's fair.
I just wanted to mention it. Yeah. So I guess overperforming in 3rd position, I put my guilty pleasure Freak. I love how bonkers it is. I love that you get Mr. T in drag and Bobcat Goldthwait as a sock puppet, and like these weird Rastafarian eyes and this strangely affected, creature effects. A central character who learns no lessons, is consistently a shitheel the whole movie, and as the credits roll, remains a shitheel. This is a movie that contains the old classic joke. How many feminists does it take to screw in a light bulb? 2, 1 to screw in a light bulb, 1 to ride my Johnson. Why do I let it go? Because it's a comment on it. They're not making fun of feminists. They're making fun of the asshole dumb enough to tell that joke. So it's stupid, and all it wants to do is put a smile on your face, and for that, it's really hard to hate.
I wish I smiled more.
High art, it is not.
No.
I think it's one of these movies that you're greatly benefited by seeing it in the time it came out. I actually was thinking about that in relation to our 90s conversation.
Yes.
I wonder how you would have felt about Mimic, for instance, if you'd watched it in 96 instead of in 2018. Or Nightbreed, if you saw it in 1990 instead of when you did, if maybe it would hit you differently. So anyway,
perhaps.
It's not for everyone. This is the most personal one on the list. I couldn't put it higher than 3, but it did manage to go higher than the John Hughes movie, which is maybe suspicious. I'm sorry, but for me, in 2nd place is where Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man hits it. It overperforms in that I guess a case could be made that it's way better than it has any business being, considering this cast. And, well, I mean, like I said, the supporting players are kind of interesting, but I don't know how they expected this one to tear up the box office, even at the time. And, it's little remembered. And it's got a lot of charm. And
there's a lot of good stuff in it.
They don't make them like this necessarily anymore. So I don't know. It's an interesting oddity, and I think it's, again, another one of these titles that a lot of people miss. So if anybody finds this movie because of this podcast,
that'd be good.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Number 1, comfortably, easily, I think, with a wide lead, is Super.
Okay.
I can't compare it to anything. Yeah. It's not even really a superhero movie. I think it's more about mental illness than it is about vigilantism or anything like that. And I really like the conversation that the movie's having with you. And it's a conversation. They don't give you any answers. Like, is this guy got a calling? Or is this guy just a lunatic? Or is this guy just a lunatic who managed to luck his way into doing something right?
Yeah.
But James Gunn is an interesting dude. And, like, his name being attached to a project, despite him being, ousted by Disney for having a pretty perverse sense of humor, I remain a fan of James Gunn, and I think that if I was asked which one am I going to watch more, which did I, have most fun with, I still think, I probably watch Slither and Guardians of the Galaxy more often than I'll watch Super.
Yeah.
But Super is that really lovable problem child in his canon. Like, it's so fucking strange, so violent, so dark, and so funny. I think as many people will hate it as love it. But if you're in the love it crowd, it will be so like it'll be one of those movies that you'll be trying to think, who can I show this to? There's some sick fuck in my circle of friends who's really gonna get off on Super, and I guess in my circle of friends, I'm that sick fuck because I'm giving it number one.
Yeah, no, it's a great choice. To me, it was close between the two, and I had a few less problems, and there was a little bit of a stylistic problem with the direction early on. They were doing a lot of that grainy colorization and shaky camera stuff early on, and that kind of settled itself down a bit. So that was bothering me at the beginning of the movie, but once it got in, I was just like, I'm really enjoying this, and
and you know me, I'm a real sucker for originality.
Yeah.
Like the component parts, if you heard the description, Rainn Wilson is a sad sack who puts on a costume and decides to fight crime. In your head, you start drawing a picture of this movie. Mm-hmm. And you're not drawing,
but it's not
drawing the right picture.
No.
This is a completely different thing.
Yeah.
It's
that's true.
It's a completely different thing. Number one. Thank you, brother.
Thanks.
And there it was, another episode, another rank, another battle fought and won, or lost, or both. I really appreciate everybody who was listening to that, and I hope maybe I introduced you into some new lunacy. It doesn't always have to be the same lunacy, sometimes we can find new lunacy. But if you'd like to send your feedback as how you would rank these movies or whether or not you think they are WTF worthy, please do so by writing me at ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Also, if you like Rank and Review, it means A, that you're a person of very fine tastes, and that B, there's a very good chance you'll like the Terror Table podcast. So, if you're sad that this episode is over and there's no more Rank and Review to be listening to just this second, maybe you want to give the Terror Table a try. That's it, that's all. I will talk to you in 2 weeks. R&R continues to drop every other Wednesday. Thank you for listening, and please tell a friend.
you